All right, so thanks for tuning in to DebtBytes, our YouTube channel. I've got Steve Rhode with me. Steve's a good friend of mine and a debt relief and credit expert, has been working in the field for decades. Look at him.
Yeah.
So, Steve, we have a purpose. You and I get together and we can get on and off topic all the time, but our main topic today that we want to try and focus on is borrower defense and what that means to student loan borrowers right now, in the last 6 months, since it's become all the rage, and on a moving forward basis too. So you cover student loans more than I think anybody I know of online, any of the personal finance blogs or anything. So listen, first, straight out of the gate, what's your take on borrower defense?
So borrower defense is this idea that you can ask to have all of your federal student loans forgiven if you were screwed over by the school. Fraudulent recruiting practices, they lied to you about success rates, etc. And this is, I think it's now been more than a year since I first wrote about it. And it was a little tiny known section of the law that nobody ever utilized before last year. And the Department of Education had put out a little warning saying they expected the number of people to use it to increase, which made me go, So I think it could be a very valuable tool for people who were actually screwed over by their schools and deceived to enroll only to incur massive debt. However, for most people, this could be a sandpit, and I'm sure you'll talk about that.
Okay, so look, what we've got here and some data that's available from the second report by Joseph Smith that was available in December of 2015. We're recording this right now, and it's like mid-March, right, of 2016. And the last available report is that, historically, up until last year, there were 5 submissions, 3 approved over a couple of decade period of time. So this, for all intents and purposes, didn't exist. So the DOE department coming out and saying, hey, we're expecting a few more of these. Boy, did they, because in that report, it talks about close to 15,000 submissions up to from last summer to December at the time he was, actually even November 18th was the last date that he gave in the for updated numbers. So we saw that influx, right? And in that amount of time, I've been dealing with phone calls, I've been dealing with emails, corresponding with people in virtually every way, and even other debt relief and credit experts. And the resounding kind of response to this, at least initially, is that people aren't prepared to put forward that information. They're not in a position to understand what it is essentially. And I think, you do a fantastic job at reporting on this, but I think there's I guess it's an excitement, right? Because at least from
I would say that the problem facing this borrower defense way to get your student loans forgiven is the same basic problem that you and I face in helping people with all sorts of debt relief, which is people, I love people, but it seems like a lot of people, when they're in this situation, they're not necessarily in a mindset to research all the ins and outs, and they go as far as the headline or the title, and then they think everything applies to them. And that's just not the case. Whether it's student loan assistance or this borrower defense thing, there is a huge pothole that could actually cause people to increase their student loan balances if they are not prepared for submitting these borrower defense claims.
Sure, because they go into deferment.
You and I have talked a lot on the phone. It feels like we talk almost every day or every other day about this now. And this is something that I think that while it seems simple, it requires either a professional touch, professional approach, some expertise, and it's just not something you throw against the wall and hope that your loans go away.
All right, so let me just talk about a technicality, right? Where it's like, oh, I'm excited. Everybody's talking about this. It's all a buzz in their social media, and a branch of Occupy Wall Street or Occupy Debt or however that's worded has got a hold of this, right? And there's just a lot of energy behind it. Fine, great, right?
Yep,
that
getting
awareness.
People excited about it.
Yeah, but here's a technicality, right? And this is right in Smith's, and he's the special master for borrower defense appointed by the Department of Education. That's who he reports to. And he talks about in his second report about what students are getting, or what they're who they're looking for. They're looking for students who relied upon false or misleading placement rate disclosures in enrolling, and he specifically calls out Hill colleges, which were part of the Corinthian colleges, who have established a borrower defense claim as to which relief would be granted under California law. Well, this report and much of the submissions are coming out of Corinthian campuses out of California. The vast majority of them that he had up to date in this report. So what they're looking for is, and what they're talking about is something that was already pre-established. It was a attorney general action against the colleges, right? So
and
they
this is all unintended consequences.
Yeah.
I mean, the Department of Education really raised this out of this dark closet it was in, this defense, because they had to deal with all those Corinthian loans that they had already felt were deceptive. So once they opened that door, ta-da!
Well, and you know what? It does apply, right? So here's a good example, right? So we're talking about this in different states, the Corinthians, but amount of Art Institute, for example.
Right.
These aren't Corinthian college campuses. They were just under 14%, 13.9% of the submissions
What
for
about
borrower
ITT?
defense. Yeah, ITT was 2.4. And of course, just after this report, we saw that sensational claim, which you covered on your site, about that Tallahassee campus for ITT Tech and that whistleblower lawsuit there. So I expect to see more of these things, sure. But, right now, as of today, I have had consults, emails, and comment exchanges online where I've only really had one that kind of came at me with like, no, they were ready, right? They understood what's required of them to submit for borrower defense, and they had a really good situation. They'd already done the homework.
Here's the important thing. While we're talking about Corinthian, DeVry, ITT Tech, Wyotech, all these schools that get all this negative press, these very same principles apply to every college. For years now, I have covered the fact that colleges have been deceiving and just downright lying to prospective students. Even four-year colleges, nonprofit colleges, that fudge their numbers.
Yeah.
And there are now, finally, in the last year, there's some good online tools for checking to see exactly what their performance rate is. And up until now, they didn't have to tell people the truth. So this will become more mainstream, and it's why people need to pay attention to this now.
You know what? I'll put a couple of links up. When I publish this video, when it's available to the public, you'll be able to look above and see a couple of links to some of those tools where you can check on, the completion rates and the employment rates at your different colleges, because those tools are really helpful. Okay. So, Steve, you actually showed me a app that was created to submit these borrower defense claims, right? So This is the problem, or it's great to have the attention and the excitement, but there's a problem in that I looked at the app. I saw what they're just 3 bulleted items as far as the most important aspect of your submission is that what went wrong, whatever it was, why, okay?
Right.
And 3 bullet points that you're just saying yes or no to.
Right.
Does not. Yeah. Here's what Smith's asking for, right? So their team at the borrower defense team that is reviewing all of these. They're talking about, in this regard, it is important to note that the statements by claimants in their own words of how they were treated by the schools against which they have made a claim will be helpful to our resolution of claims. So, how is it that an app highlighting 3 maybes, maybe nots, yes, no, does somebody even have somebody to encourage them to why are they checking no, why are they checking? There's none of that. And none of it is something that is contained in their own words, right? So I think it's problematic that, okay, let's get excited about these things, but at the same time, let's do it right. Like you said, okay, so the religious objection organization, I talked to somebody.
That is an objection that I like to put in the category of bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just wonder how many, it's a lot like, okay, so I'm going to tie this into something probably more consistent, especially in the debt relief space, is credit repair, okay? So, you've got these things on there, you don't want them on there. You've got this student loan debt, you don't want the student loan debt. And if wishes were fishes, right? So you send off this bullshit dispute to the credit reporting agencies that has no bearing in fact. These are accurate things. You just don't want to deal with it, right? So
but the interesting thing is that doing that doesn't have the same consequence of sending in this borrower defense that we're talking about. The huge pothole in that borrower defense claim is once you submit your application, whether it's total bullshit or not, the problem is it triggers a process that puts your loans in forbearance, which sounds wonderful, no more payments for a while, and removes you from collections. Again, sounds wonderful. But that process can last up to a year, and for these initial waves of people submitting them, the numbers are going to be huge. The Department of Education is not going to be able to handle these submissions. And while your loan is in forbearance, the balances continue to increase. So if you submit a crap claim and a year later your claim is denied, the only thing that's going to happen out of this is you're going to owe more money.
You owe more. Yeah. Couple of things that are interesting that have come out of this recently, though, is student loan borrower assistance, which is a program that is, I think, run still with NCLC, the National Consumer Law Center, and a whole bunch of other consumer advocate organizations put out a report to the DOE wanting them to, consider certain things, and there are active discussions and dialogue going on, right?
Yeah.
So some interesting stuff on there is that Parent Plus loans apply, right? That it's clear that FFEL loans apply. And so while much of this borrower defense, so much of it consists of things dating around a certain time frame of loans, and it's most of the coverage is, again, like you talked about, Everest, Wildtech, Corinthian colleges, that kind of the Hill colleges, that it has much wider applicability. And we're just starting to talk about this in this video, but it's been, like you said, you covered it a year ago. We're going to see a whole bunch more. And what I'd love to see is that people actually get a grip and start to factor in. And I don't care. I'll have a 1 hour a week live Google Hangout or something, and we'll have 9 heads or 10 heads talking on the screen and coming together with the state issues, right? The state laws. Let's put a finer point pen to this and really start to designate why you're submitting. What state laws, if it's UDAP, if it's unfair, deceptive acts and practices that every state has, okay, are you finding that? Let's talk about that stuff and give student loan borrowers more of a
chance to actually have it, actually forgiven. Now, what is going to happen before any of this process gets squared away at the Department of Education and they come up with a smooth way to handle these things is it feels like it's only minutes away that our dear debt relief scammer brethren are going to jump on this, and they're going to start selling programs to people where we can have all of your federal student loans forgiven for $5.99 or something. And essentially all they're going to do is fill out that crap online questionnaire. They're not going to research these things. I think that the claims for having all of your federal student loans forgiven that have the most chance of success are those that actually have some legal basis under your individual state law for why it is deceptive and unfair. And you have to give the Department of Education an opportunity to say, this is a good and valid claim and we will accept it. Because as you noted in the beginning, they have accepted these claims in the past.
Just a couple of them, right? Until we saw this last year. But over 1,000 of these have now been, Smith's team has submitted them to the department, with their recommendation for approval of complete and total loan discharge, which, by the way, they've got an IRS administrative letter that these aren't going to be taxable, that forgiven debt, which is awesome.
But here's the backside of this, and this is why this is going to be an ongoing fight. Because under this borrower defense claim, while the student has their loans forgiven, if it's approved, the Department of Education is going to go back and claw back the money from the school.
If they're open.
Yeah.
Corinthian bankrupt.
Those schools are going to fight like crazy.
Yes, they are.
And this is going to be a mess for a while. So right now, we're just at the very tip of people being aware of this. People are going to do stupid, uninformed things jumping into the program.
Or that's sold to them.
Yeah, or sold to them, right. And I would expect that this is going to be a big mess for a while. But it will eventually, we'll have some clarity, we'll have some rules, we'll have some understanding of exactly who's appropriate. And moving forward, it would be a good program.
Yeah, no, and it could be. Right now, based on this last report that I've been referring to today, right now, there's another report due out any minute. But Smith had 4 attorneys working with him for all of those submissions. Now, you and I were talking the other day, and you talked about that app, and there being a couple 100,000 submissions through that app.
There's a what I like to call a shitload.
That seems to be the theme. Oh shit. That's what they're saying with 4 attorneys. They're going to need resources. They're going to need a more methodical plan to go about it. I want people to be more methodical when they go about it. And I can't help but make this, correlation of, the debt relief industry and their willingness to try and profit off of whatever they can. This is important stuff.
But let's be clear about this for a second, that this is a fine point that many people, I've failed to get people to understand is, we talk about debt relief scammers and we talk about people paying for service. The fine point here is that if you don't have the skills to do this, and you have found somebody who does have the skills to do it, and you are willing to pay an expert to do it for you, that's certainly a valid and logical consideration. It's like, some of the advice is everybody needs to run off and do this themselves and not pay anybody for help. But that's so much like, putting in your own filling. I'm not a dentist. I'm not going to be out there drilling my tooth in the garage trying to do my own filling. I'm going to rely on an expert. So, find an expert, because the consequences of not doing this correctly could cost you lots of money.
Well, and then the motivation of the person sometimes.
But here's a good one. Lots of law schools in the United States have fudged their employment figures for a long period of time. They have said that, our graduates are 80% employed, and come to find out that, yes, they were employed temporarily while they were doing the survey. They might have actually even been employed by the school for a week or two while they were doing the survey. And those things are now subject to court actions. There's one in California that's still ongoing. So it is not unheard of schools promoting false information to encourage students to enroll, even if they are mainstream schools.
So, Steve, we can't help, because of how much you cover student loans and have been for years, especially this next aspect, I can't let you get away with not talking about the fact that a lot of folks think that they just, even in the legal field, think that student loans just categorically are almost near impossible to get discharged in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. But you've been out there proving people wrong for a couple of years now. Tell me, this is going to be, for viewers, what are some of the things that you're seeing people succeed with in getting their student loans discharged in bankruptcy?
Well, there are a couple things. Is an involving topic, but certainly one of the easiest things is people with private student loans. So, big organizations like Sallie Mae originated private student loans, but come to find out that they originated these loans for lots of schools that were not Title IV accredited or meeting the accreditation standards of the Department of Education, and the bankruptcy code does not protect those loans. So if you went to a trade school, a flight school, any sort of thing like that, I would direct you to a bankruptcy attorney to talk about it, but most bankruptcy attorneys don't understand this topic. Those loans are not protected in bankruptcy. They would be instantly dischargeable, and those that put forward those cases have those loans discharged. The tough part is finding an attorney who understands this. The other thing is you can discharge federal student loans. Historically, this has been that you had to prove an undue hardship, and basically the undue hardship was you had one leg, $1 in your pocket, and 2 breaths left. But these days, it's not like that.
No.
And there are different tests, and courts around the country are applying different tests. And this is an evolving topic, but more and more federal student loans are being discharged through bankruptcy. Case in point is one gentleman who contacted me recently, used information from an article of mine, was talking about how the Department of Education has said that they will pursue less of these cases. And he filed an adversary proceeding in bankruptcy. He did it himself, and he was able to discharge $130,000 in federal student loans without a trial or any additional discovery by using this Department of Education guidance. So it's becoming more frequent. Right now, while the Department of Education has said, we're going to stop fighting these discharges in most cases, the process that deals with these is like a huge ship, and it just takes a while to turn the whole damn thing around. And so in the meantime, you've got the Department of Education saying, we're not going to fight it. And then you've got their lawyers fighting it, you know. So we will see more times when the tests will become much more logical to have these loans discharged. Right now, as it is, you can take somebody who's unemployed, disabled, and the lawyer for the student loan, the Department of Education, or whoever is holding that loan, will argue, you know, Your Honor, they always have an opportunity to get a better job in the future, which, I mean, that's just not common sense. So, yeah, I mean, that's the Bruner test that people might hear about. But the one that's more important is this thing called the totality of circumstances that is a common sense test. And it will get weeded out, and more people need to file. And if you go to your attorney and he just go to your bankruptcy attorney and they say just flat out, there's no chance of eliminating your student loans, you should probably go get a second or third opinion. Because while your particular student loans may not be dischargeable because you're in good health and your circumstances are, you know, fairly good and stuff, they need to be aware of all the things that allow loans to be discharged.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? On that note, any viewers, you know, if you have student loan questions, post them in the comments below. We correspond on our YouTube videos every day, so you can get some dedicated feedback and some suggestions about how to look at either bankruptcy or borrower defense, which is the main topic of this. Steve, you have, and I'll have a link up to your site. You have tons of resources. I mean, the most resources of anywhere about this issue, especially student loans and bankruptcy, or just student loans in general. So what would you suggest that, based on the coverage that you've had so far and this new app that's submitting things in bulk, I mean, what are your top 3 ideas or top 3 suggestions to people, to viewers dealing with student loan debt that they think might apply the borrower defense? What would you suggest they do?
Well, I would suggest that they, number one, take a deep breath and understand that these things are a good opportunity, but they're not as simple as they appear to be. So don't rush into something that can cost you more in the long run if you make a mistake. It's the same advice that I give people who are considering filing bankruptcy themselves. If you don't want to take the time and research it and figure out all the ins and outs, you should not do it yourself. The next thing is that you need to do a lot of research. You need to find out which of your state laws apply and build a case. This is not an opportunity for you to send a letter into the Department of Education and bitch at them. This is an opportunity for you to tell them exactly how you were deceived and why, and what state law applies, and why it is obvious that your loan should be forgiven. So deep breath, research, and put together a professional presentation would be my 3 things.
Okay, cool. I really, if I can get you back, I think I'm going to feel out this, you know, because you and I have done, you know, Google Hangouts before. We've not done them, you know, in bulk with, you know, filling up the whole screen with attendees.
Yeah, happy to.
Yeah, but if I can get you back and we can start talking about this some more, and then, like I said, put a finer point to state issues, and maybe we can tackle a state at a time and bring on an attorney from each state. You and I know many that are part of, you know, collection defense and all that stuff. They care about these issues. So, all right, so thanks for tuning in to DebtBytes. Subscribe to our YouTube channel right here and get more updates on student loan issues and some of the other things that you might be interested in when it comes to debt and credit.
Yeah. But I urge everyone who is watching this to subscribe to DebtBytes and to subscribe to Michael's information and to subscribe to the YouTube channel, because he is a brilliant guy.
Wow. Thank you for that, sir. I'll see you on the next video. All right.